Well, I would like to resurrect Staphisagria. I would like to make a confession that you may not be getting wrong impressions. That every time that I give a remedy, I go through a labor. You know, the pains of a labor. It's not an easy task. As I try to communicate my deepest experience which I have with these cases and the impressions that these people have made upon my conscience. So you will excuse sometimes too much of talking with my hands and expressions, but I cannot do otherwise. Well, when this, I just have the old notes of Staphisagria. It says the main idea, characteristic of Staphisagria is suppression of emotions. I mean, you know, everybody, you know that. But I have come to the conclusion that the Staphisagria case, the typical constitutional Staphisagria case, I would pin it down to another expression, which is, I would say, Staphisagria is a very effeminate remedy, with all the connotations that this expression brings about. Effeminate, sensitive, female remedy, refined, not aggressive, sweet, you cannot how can I say, mix Staphisagria with another grief remedy, because Staphisagria, as you all know, is a remedy which is given mainly after grief. And which other remedies which are given after grief? Tell some. Ignatia, Natrium muriaticum, phosphoric acid, causticum, etc. Ignatia is after grief, and Natrium muriaticum is after grief, and Staphisagria is after grief. But if you had my experience, if the person comes inside and sits down and says hello, you say hello, you have discriminated already between Ignatia, Natrium muriaticum, Staphisagria. It's another type of hello. The sweetness is the main characteristic of the Staphisagria. The not exactly aggressiveness, but the hysterical kind of protection that the Ignatia has, and the thorns which you feel are coming through her psychic are quite a different experience than the Staphisagria. The Staphisagria will do that, will sit there, will say hello, and the first thing she will think, or he will think, is, now, why should I bother him? How much should I tell him? She will be very timid. She will give you very little information in the beginning, and you will see eventually some contrasts and some similarities with Thuya. She does not want to give you more information. Why? Because she does not want to bother you. But if you really show an interest of seeing Staphisagria, really you ask, Yes, yes, you tell me, yes, what happens? And then you are a good listener. Staphisagria very soon will open up and will tell you the whole story. Usually, it is a story of grief with Staphisagria. And a grief which has come about not because of deaths or of business catastrophes or things, but a grief which has come about because of ruptured emotional relationships. Ruptured emotional relationships. They are erotic, what's called this? Ruptured, severed. When there is a love, when there is a love affair and there is a broken that love affair, which call this? Ruptured, broken. It is the emotional, it's the erotic element with Staphisagria which is weak, which is the weakness in the constitution is on that level. The Staphisagria patient, because of the sensitivity, because of the receptivity, they are so receptive, they are so nice, they want to please everybody who comes along, and especially those who they love, that it is very easy for the people who live together with the Staphisagria cases to suppress them. You see, the man learns that he can raise his voice with the Staphisagria, and Staphisagria will never retaliate, will never speak back. And then next time he raises more his voice, and more his voice, and more his voice, and then eventually he raises his hand. And we have cases where I have heard tragic stories where the man is beating the woman, and beating her, quite a lot, without the woman holding a grudge against him. The Staphisagria mentality is such that they believe that they are not something special. They are not something which one should really take care, but they are there to serve, rather, and to please the others. In this way, whoever lives with Staphisagria, if they are not sensitive, if the man or the woman is not sensitive, very easily will bring about a suppression of emotions. So Staphisagria will suffer either because there is a long story of suppression, and how one feels when he has reached the lowest level of human integrity. You know, that is how they feel about themselves. No integrity at all. They have been kicked like dogs. No, this is the feeling. And yet, they do not have the courage to speak out and to express their anger or their grief. You see, that element is too effeminate. And in men, we shall see the same situation. Men that by nature, they have a kind of refined, very refined and sensitive perception and feeling. And they can be behaving like a woman, like this woman. What is more interesting is with Staphisagria, when there is a little bit more pathology in the emotional level, that we see that at a certain stage a man gets the idea that he is effeminate. Fear of being a homosexual is quite frequently met with the Staphisagria men. Fear of being a homosexual. They are not. They have never experienced. But the fear comes in them at certain point where, especially perhaps in our societies, I don't know if the older homeopaths have seen that there is a tormenting fear that everybody looks at them and they look as if they were a woman. Everybody thinks that he's effeminate. The Staphisagria is suffering mostly, as I said, on the emotional level, and especially on the erotic side of this level. I would like to give you a little bit more explanation of what I mean. You see, with that element, that soft element which is with Staphisagria, you expect that there is not a great virility with the man. And what do we observe? We observe sometimes extreme situations where a child, which now has intense feelings, because Staphysagrias, they do not deaden their feelings. The feelings are there. They are sensitive. They are aroused very easily, but cannot be expressed. So everything is inside. When everything is inside, the imagination is playing a bigger and bigger role in their life. So the emotions are strong, but not strong enough, not aggressive enough to come into grips with the surrounding. So there is an imagination, there is easily arousal, and the sexual instinct is aroused at the same time as the emotional. And what we observe in very small children, like 6, 7, 8 years old, to have full sexual desires and of course imagine quite a lot, and therefore from the very young age to go into masturbation. So it's one of the main remedies for the ill effects of masturbation. But the idea is that we perceive the type of person. You see, platina, oreganon, hyoscyamos, lycosis, all these remedies, they can go into masturbation, but it's another type. You see, in order to have the ill effects of masturbation in a person, you have to have that type of person. You have that sensitive boy or sensitive girl who look upon the world, they imagine it, they do not have the force inside to go out and really come into contact with the world. Everything stays inside, everything stays in the imagination. The man grows up 10, 12, 15, 16, and still on the habit of masturbation, only masturbation, and then more and more and more. And of course, they may reach sometimes. I have tackled cases where they were quite bad in that respect, a man 37, 38 years old, where he had never been with a woman. He was masturbating from the age of 7 to the age of 37. He was a very fine man. They have very good contact, these people, because they are concerned with the others. But you see the soft element inside. Man needs to be aggressive at a certain level, which they do not have that. And as a result, everything remains in the imagination. What happens? They look at a girl, they like her, etc., and then they imagine situation. They go in bed, to lie in bed, and then the imagination becomes very powerful. And imagine scenes, sceneries, and mostly what's called a romantic type where it ends up into sex and then into masturbation. So everything happens in the imagination. Too much happens in the imagination with Staphisagria. We may call this a kind of suppression also, but it is not a real suppression. You understand the context under which this is happening. A man, you see, there is easy arousal. That's why there is quite a great need to have sexual stimulation. And some of the cases, eventually, if the man grows up quite a lot, they are reluctant or they fear to have contact with women. And though they want to marry, they want to make a family, they are reluctant to go forward and propose in a woman, to date a woman or to come in contact with a woman. What I'm giving you are a little bit the extreme cases where the ideas are there. You see, the idea of this kind of timidity. You see, if you look in the repertory, I think Kent does not list Staphisagria under timidity. Why? Because Staphisagria is not really timid. That means she can talk. She can communicate. But when it comes to the point where that is the weak point, there they withdraw. They do not go forward. It's a timidity on that level. Also, there is a great element which is very prominent in every one of them. They feel that their suffering belongs to them and only to them, and they don't want to bother anybody else with their problems. They don't want to bother anybody, not even the doctor to whom they have come. I have once seen a case of Staphisagria where a friend of hers telephoned and gave me some information and said she is so badly mistreated by her husband that I believe she's going to commit suicide. She came to the office complaining about her headaches, and I inquired into the matter, and she didn't want to elicit any information. When finally I gained her confidence and told the whole story, it was a terrific story. I mean, a very rich man that had absolutely destroyed that soul, that beautiful soul. They are very, very sweet, nice people. And they are nice for the others, but for themselves, they feel completely unprotected, completely weak, worthless. Where there should be aggressiveness. There should be aggressiveness. The Staphisagria will go instead of, there are two cars coming, and the car is almost hitting the car of Staphisagria, and everybody will explode, you fool, you're not careful, etc. The Staphisagria, the other man may insult the Staphisagria. The Staphisagria has not the possibility to say anything, and he is afraid to come into grips. They go home, and they will hit the head into the wall. I said, you stupid fool, why didn't you say anything? They try to persuade themselves that they should say something, and the same situation arises, and they cannot talk again. There is a blockage at that moment. There is something that holds them. There is a fear to hurt the other people. Where this cannot go for very long without some effects. And sometimes the effects are quite strong, and we may see a mental derangement arising from a long-term suppression in Staphisagria. To see Staphisagria in a crisis, in a schizophrenic crisis, it's something that you see when you see a person in a crisis like that. Usually you get a fear, you know, because there is no contact with the other person, and the other person, if you are not used with such cases, the other person is behaving absolutely out of his mind. Usually there is a fear on the spectator, on the one who looks. With Staphisagria, there is sympathy. You know, the way she talks, the way she says things is sweet still, in spite of the fact she may be talking now, because during the mental crisis, she will bring all the suppression out. And she will say to her husband, for instance, "I don't love your mother." "I don't love your mother." You see, there is no contact. Tell her, "I do not love her." But you do not see hatred coming out. The words are coming without hatred behind. And then they will reach a stage where all this suppression will be expressed with motions, will be expressed by taking things and throwing them, you know. Take this, throw it, take that, throw it. And usually what happens is they don't take something which is heavy to throw it against somebody. It's just throwing things up and down, right and left, without aiming to hit somebody. It is an outburst, but yet there is consideration for others, even during that crisis. They have no bitterness. So the emotion. Another thing that can happen with Staphisagria, you see, they go into a marriage. They go into a marriage, and soon they discover that they don't love anymore the husband. They will keep on for year after year. We had a case here, 37 years. He says, "I have lived with a man I stopped loving from the first year." Still did not have the courage to divorce. They do not have the courage to stand by themselves. You see again this effeminate element. You will hear stories of that type, and then you will see a tumor developing, a hardening of some glands, where Staphisagria is famous for hardening of the prostate gland, for fibroids in the uterus, for nodules in the breasts. The same thing as thuya, as physical effect. Hardening, even, you know, they have an operation. There is a cut, and all along the cut there is a keloid formed, and there is a hardening of that point. And many times can be pain all along, very severe pain all along the cut. if they develop emotionally, yes, later they develop an indifference, and they develop a kind of what can I say? I don't care attitude. I don't care attitude. In reality, there is a deep hurt feeling which has become indifferent. The same applies with the sex. Eventually, those people that are so much oversexed, they go into impotency. A woman, they go into fragility, men go into impotency. Therefore, Staphisagria becomes one of the main remedies for the impotent man. But an impotent man who has, it's another interesting thing to find, you know, that Staphisagria cases, if they do go out of themselves and they do establish some kind of relationship with a woman, and after that they become so much excited that they may become promiscuous. They may become easily aroused and going from one woman to another, or a woman from one man to another, and becoming promiscuous. In such cases, because of the element of grief that is involved in the rupture of the relationship, we usually see impotency or fragility afterwards. It's also interesting that a man 35, 36, 37, I remember a case of a man on a boat, was the captain of a boat. Was supposed to be a hard man, a captain on a boat, you know, these boats that the petrol people, you know, the type of people they work there. And he was a captain on that boat, and the appearance was quite masculine. But actually, what was happening, this man had never been with a woman, neither with a man. He was very reluctant to have any relationship at all. And he was a sweet man, and when you examine him, he would see his interests were quite artistic and poetic. It's interesting also that these people, they will go usually into arts as a kind of outlet, but arts which do not involve interaction, but they are solitary arts, like painting, like writing poetry, like playing the piano. They will not go into theater, where there is interaction, into directing, into things like that. So, in their relationships, in the beginning they are quite platonic. They will imagine the relationship mostly than live in it. And as they become very easily aroused, and the fantasy is very strong, and they form a relationship, the relationship is not realistic. You see, the Staphisagria, without saying anything, actually is living a lot of emotions which are not in an analogous state from the other person. The other person, you know, usually is more withdrawn, careful. The Staphisagria is giving herself to the relationship because she made up a lot of things by her imagination. With the result, when there is a broken relationship, she really goes through hell. After a love disappointment or a confrontation, they suffer with intense symptomatology. A diarrhea can be established. There is frequent urination, cystitis. There is trembling. The development of tumors, enlarged prostates, etc. Also, they develop headaches, which they have, which characteristic?
Wooden sensation.
Huh? Which characteristic, not the band? Which is the characteristic headache of Staphisagria? Wood. A feeling of wood, especially on the occiput. A feeling of wood, as if the head is made out of wood. This is typical of Staphisagria, and not only on the occiput, it can be anywhere. If the feeling of wood is there, if they describe it in this way, it is Staphisagria. Staphisagria also, it's a very interesting and very good remedy for chorea. Chorea which develop especially in the young boys or girls after have been reprimanded. Chorea. And Staphisagria also, it will be very useful in cases of psoriasis where you see all this history of suppressed emotions, of indignation, of going through this torture, of being demolished by another person. No, it's not especially a cold remedy, Staphisagria, no. Do not think of this remedy for yourself, because it is every time that you may listen to a remedy, you will find certain things that apply to you. And it is good if you let somebody else always take your case, because we cannot see ourselves objectively. Very difficult, very difficult. I have seen a very intelligent man, very intelligent, very sensitive man, and he was not a doctor, but he got hold of some books and read. So we have prescribed for him 1 or 2 remedies that didn't work. So he read the Materia Medica and went and took himself buffo. So he came one day, he said to me, you know what? I said to God, he said, I took buffo. I said, why? He said, I want to confess to you, you know, that I have been masturbating and things like that. You know, buffo, one of the main symptoms of buffo is masturbating and 6 places to masturbate, etc. I said, what? And then I realized that he was Staphisagria. I mean, you can, not you, buffo. No. It's another appearance. An artistic man of great sensitivity, I mean, just because you masturbate. I said, no. He took Staphisagria, which helped him tremendously. But you see how one can go astray completely by thinking a remedy about himself. And you see also the element of Staphisagria again, how he thought, yes, I'm nothing, I'm this, I'm absolutely earthy man who does not care about anything else but sex and there is many times in Staphisagria there are some fears, and we have fear of thunderstorms. I don't know if it is in the repertory, but with Staphisagria is quite strong. I just want to read you some sayings of the patient and how we translate it into Staphisagria. You see this patient, what he says. Generally, she is restricting her crying and feels a constriction in the throat, and she cannot breathe. You see, if you read that, you feel it is Ignacia. Then she goes further, and she says, this is happening usually when she has problems with her lessons and problems with her relationship. I have problems, he says, with my relationships, and I would like to be in the company of people, but yet I do not have the courage to go. It's difficult to enter a discussion when I am with people. In some gathering, I become an observer, and I am afraid to express my feelings. Very easily hurt, but never shows it to anybody. She is a lonely type, but she wants company again. It is not, you are not going to find, how can I say, an outright, I mean, the person will go and say, I have suppressed emotions. And you say, oh, good, Staphisagria. When you see that, usually it's not Staphisagria. When the person says, I have suppressed emotions, I have suppressed my anger, even if he says that in this way, it's not Staphisagria. Never mind. So therefore, you don't have to, those that they've seen the video, they understand what I mean. You don't have to listen to the words of the person, but to the actual story behind the words and how it is said. A Staphisagria will not come and tell you, I have suppressed anger, I have suppressed my emotions. She will open up, she will talk to you a bit more and more, and when she comes to the point where she will really wants to talk from deep, she will burst on crying. And then she will say how stupid I make you feel comfortable, and she concerns about you, and she tells a little bit more and a little bit more, and then you get a story where really there is a tremendous suppression. You see, I mean, do you feel that you have suppressed yourself through this situation? Yes, I think so. You see, it is what I try to give you, to give you the possibility, when they see a case, going through the repertory and seeing certain symptoms, to be able to construct a living picture and not seeing a case flat, just 5 symptoms, that is Staphisagria. But who is in front of you? Is an atrum muriaticum. But yes, but the 5 symptoms I took is Staphisagria. It doesn't matter. This cannot be Staphisagria. This cannot be Staphisagria. When I was brought a case of a doctor, by another doctor. So I read the case, he said, I think it's phosphorus. So I said, okay, let me see the case. So he told the doctor to come in. He came in and he sat there. I didn't have to ask anything. It's not a phosphorus, because you see the aggressiveness, you see inside what's going on, and the thinking, and the criticism, and the nervousness, and it can't be phosphorus. So 1 or 2 questions, Nax vomica. Nax vomica with a phosphorus. You cannot really mix. You see the state a woman she has reached. She says, Staphisagria case, I don't want to go out of my bed. I just want to lie in my bed. She's so tired, she has become indifferent, complete indifference to sex. Since I married, I stopped loving my husband. She says I'm sensitive and refined, and everything I keep inside and I never speak out. You see, reading a case is more difficult to ascertain, but yet there are hints there in the case where you say, no, this cannot be Nux vomica, cannot be Phosphorus, cannot be Ignatia, cannot be Natrium muriaticum, this must be Staphisagria. Yet you will not get typical stories. You see, another story starts, a want of self-confidence. I don't have any self-confidence. See how it starts. The husband is too authoritative, and I was relying on him. They rely on the husband. And 2 years ago, the husband had another love affair. It's very interesting that they will not talk. The husband has a love affair, and a second love affair, and fourth love affair, and they will not talk. They will not say anything. You see, when you get that kind of story, most probably behind that story is Staphisagria. Now she has indifference to everything. And another element also, which is quite frequently you will find in Staphisagria, is that because they cannot talk in front of somebody, they talk to themselves. And you may see a Staphisagria talking absolutely if there was somebody else in front of him. You know, is the man with shaving, and at the same time talking with somebody. And I've been described this situation by the woman, that for the first time she hears him talking, you know. Says, what is this? And talks very seriously and very calmly, as if there is a serious conversation.
Can that be silent as well?
Baby?
Can that be silent, that conversation?
Silent?
No, in the head.
I can't hear.
Can that be silent in the head, in somebody's head, you know? Do you understand?
Just in the head.
This one.
Inwardly talking to themselves.
I have not been told that. I don't remember, maybe.
Would they talk at night?
In bed. Yes, they may talk at night in bed, yes. But mostly the remedies who talk in the night are belladonna and calicarbonecum. They talk loudly. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to give you the exact information, and I hope with the videos that we are going to produce to show you cases of Staphisagria. And you have to see a few cases of Staphisagria, and then you will be able to recognize it. It is a nice patient to have. Never will hold on to you, never will make a weight on you. where the arsenicum case will grab onto you, you see? Am I going to die? Am I going to die? This idea, you know, the kali arsenicum. And most of all, which remedy?
Is it easy to confuse with silica?
Yes, it's easy to confuse silica, yes. It's easy to confuse Staphisagria with silica. The makeup is quite close, but with one big difference. In silica, there is great integrity. The integrity is intact. The integrity of the person, you see? You get a history where you don't see the person's integrity being completely destroyed with silica. With Staphisagria, the integrity of the person has completely been destroyed, and they cannot do anything until you give Staphisagria, in which case they will divorce. There are many cases of Staphisagria that have divorced after getting the remedy. Many. And rightly so, you know, because the situation brought them into the state in which they come to get to the treatment. So, the most dependent, which is the most dependent remedy? You tell me. The remedy who really is a you say the whole name?
Nitric acid.
Nitric acid. Yes, very good. The nitric acid patient is very nagging, very demanding from the doctor, very never satisfied. What is wrong? What is wrong with me? Do I have cancer? No, you don't have cancer. But are you sure I don't have cancer? Yes. I mean, this story is going on and on and on. So we'll have some time for some questions that you may ask.
You mentioned before the pathology, talking about cystitis, would you include colitis?
Oh yes, sure. And the cystitis mostly is with newly married women. You will have a frequent urination and a kind of cystitis, which starts because of the emotional stress of the woman being on the marriage. Yes?
George, could you repeat the question? Because a lot of people can't hear when it comes from the front here.
Ah.
Can you repeat the question for us?
The Staphisagria, woman especially, gets cystitis as soon as gets married because of the stress of the marriage. The idea, no, perhaps. The idea, did you hear the question? There is the impression given by somebody that Staphisagria is very indignant and frustrated. Angry, yes. No, Staphisagria element will come from indignation, from talking badly somebody to Staphisagria. And Staphisagria cannot retaliate, cannot say anything, and then starts the pathology. That's the idea. It's not that she is on that state. I have not seen Staphisagrias being in that state.
Do you see any resentment,
If I see any resentment except?
the emotional, I mean, is there
Yes.
resentment, hidden resentment?
Not to a great degree, I would say. Not to a great degree. Yes?
This morning when
Vithoulkas, yes, that's a good point. Vithoulkas is not that is having out of the body experiences, but during sleep, as the we have to explain the mechanics of sleep now, but anyhow, the understanding is that the etheric body during sleep goes out, and with Vithoulkas there is a sensitivity that with some noise or some external stress, the body comes suddenly back, and there is a jerk and the dream that they are falling at that moment. And they come back as if they are falling, and they jerk and they come back to themselves. It is not out of the body experiences. We have such experiences, we have mostly with cannabis indica and Nux moschata. Yes?
Could I ask you about something else?
Yes?
We were talking this morning about the different layers that come through, the different remedies,
Yes.
training layers. When you're taking a chronic test, you tend to see indications for each of those three remedies
Yes.
woven together through
Yes.
the case. I was wondering if you could elucidate some guidelines as to how you differentiate where the layers are.
You see, the question is, did you hear all the question?
No.
No. I indicated that in a person there might be three layers. That means three remedies. And sometimes there are indications when you take the case of the second remedy. That means you see Natrium muriaticum, but you see a symptom of Vithoulkas, or you see sepia in the uppermost, but a symptom of Natrium muriaticum, or two symptoms of Natrium muriaticum underneath. How do we differentiate, and how do we decide that we give this remedy and not that remedy? That second one, which has two symptoms. See, the idea is to have that remedy selected which covers most of the totality at the moment. Most of the totality. If something does not tally, and that information comes from a remedy which is complementary to the one you can see, then you immediately suspect that the second remedy is going to be complementary to the first one, and it is good to decide to give first this one and then the second that has only 2 indications. You give the one that has 6 indications or 10 indications, and the 2 indications you keep it for next time, especially if there is a complementary relationship. Staphisagria is complemented by causticum, and perhaps with colosynthesis sometimes. And sometimes there is a possibility of Staphisagria, causticum, and then they go into colosynthesis, acute states, and then maybe again Staphisagria. Staphisagria and Natrium muriaticum.
Can people stand up when we ask questions? It's about mics, okay?
On what aspect? Well, to my understanding, there is no much similarity between Natrium muriaticum and Staphisagria, apart from the fact that we say we give both these remedies after grief. But a person, a Natrium muriaticum person, is a closed person, a person that you will feel there is no contact. That is the first difference that you will notice. The Natrium muriaticum sits there and you sit here. There is a distance. Don't touch me. Attitude. The Staphisagria sits there and kind is left to your discretion. She is there, she looks at you, she cares about you more than you care about her. It's another experience altogether to have Staphisagria. You see, what I'm talking about experience, this experience is something that it's very difficult to really communicate it to you, and I'm trying. I'll give you another example to explain what do I mean by experience. Once we treated in the center a small girl, 16 or 17 years old, with very, very severe asthma, and we had given different remedies. So one night, the doctor who was attending the girl comes into my office, says, "Come inside." So why? Usually they call me when there is a big problem. So the girl is in a big crisis, is in a great difficulty in breathing, and he said to me, "We are treating this girl for more than a year without any effect. I mean, come and see." And we have given Ignacia, Natrium muriaticum, different other remedies. I go inside, and there is the young girl. Like that. She does not look at me. Where I enter or did not enter, doesn't matter. And then she's red. Quite red bluish color. No? And you see the vibrations which are coming are vibrations of hatred, hate, you know. I felt she was hating me deeply, you know. Why did you bring me here, etc., etc. This is the idea. She will not talk. So immediately the vibrations are not of Ignacia or Natrium muriaticum or the remedies that we have given. The idea I get from there and the hatred I see and the intensity of the emotions bring to my mind lycosis. As if I was responsible for her being sick, you know. She wanted to kill me almost. We have given different other remedies. I said to the mother, do you have another child? The mother nods. And how old is he? 10 or 11. I turned around and said to her, do you love your brother? I said to her, do you like him, eh? Yes. The mother goes behind and says, no. I said, you're not jealous at all about him, eh? You don't. The vibration was, you fool, you let me alone. She was red. She was sick. I mean, then we take it outside. The child said, what about this? How they fare? You see, the asthma actually started after the birth of the second child almost. You know, we connect almost the whole situation. This is the remedy. You see, I have been studying the case, the written case, and I've been making mistakes, like everybody, when you read a case. When I saw the case, this is what I said. Can it be Staphisagria? No. You see, this is an experience which comes. It's very difficult for me to communicate that. You have to understand that point. And I believe that with videos, it will be quite a different experience, because I will show you what I will translate, and then I will show you the video. 1, 2, 3 cases, 4 cases, then you get immediately the idea. You see, the man who expresses himself as aggressive, and yet is Staphisagria. He says, I like to kill this man, but there is no hatred behind. I wanted to kill him, you know, but I was not able to do anything. There is no vested emotions behind that Staphisagria retaliation if she relates or he relates it, because they are never able to face a situation. Yes?
Can
you tell us, please, when and why you would use which potency?
The question, the question of potency, yes. You see, first of all, I must tell you the experience of Athens is with remedies from 12 centesimal potencies to cm. This is our experience. That means we have centesimal potencies that we're using from 12 to cm. Usually, I would say 80% of the cases, we start between 200 and 1m. It is very seldom that we'll have very deep pathology, which is chronic, and we'll start with 12 Se. And perhaps we repeat 12 Se for a few days. 12 Se 3 times a day for 3 days, for 5 days, for 10 days. Depending on the reaction. If there is any reaction, then we stop. Then sometimes we start with a 30, where again there is a big and dangerous pathology. 200 is the highest we can start if there is deep pathology. Never higher than 200. But if there are acute situations, in most acute situations, if we know the remedy, we go high, 10m, 50m. If there are situations where you see deep disturbance in the person, especially on a psychological level or mental emotional level, we go very high, 50m cm. Just indications. Yeah?
If you'd had a case like this morning where you cured an acute situation with a 50m phosphorus,
Yes.
and then say a year later the same patient comes back and the case presents a phosphorus picture, which potency do you use if it wasn't, say, not an acute situation and not a serious situation? Which potency would you use then?
I will make a choice between, if the element is really not serious, but I still have to give something, I will make a choice and give very low, 12, very low. If the element is quite serious, I have to give at least 50m, at least the remedy that was given the last time. And you have to be careful about that, if you have given a remedy even a year ago, which is 50m, and now he comes after a year and you give 10m, it's not going to act. You have to give at least 50m again, or cm. Yes?
I have a question about the case. Not concerning the remedy or anything like this. My question is if I should take a certain case or not take it for a treatment. A lady came to me, she had acromegaly. She started off, they found when she was 20, a tumor in the lung, and they removed half a lobe of that lung by routine X-ray. A few years later, she developed acromegaly, and they thought it was a growth in the pituitary, and they removed half of the pituitary. And then a few years later, she developed deep depression with suicidal tendency, and she had antidepressants. And now she's gone back to the situation where the acromegaly is starting again, though she's not so depressed, but the growth hormone is coming up. And I said to her, I didn't know if I could take her case or not, and I thought I would like to ask for some advice on that.
Is she taking allopathic drugs?
No, she stopped all allopathic drugs. She's a nurse.
She stopped because you said to stop?
No, she gave up allopathy, although she's a nurse, she said I'm not interested anymore. And she heard the talk I gave. And then she came from a long way away to see me. And she wants the treatment very much. She has a lot of problems on homeopathy.
When a person does not take drugs, this is a general rule, you can always try with homeopathy, with one point in mind, that you always try to see the pathology behind and whether there is a danger, especially when the heart is involved. So do not make such mistakes so they can accuse you for negligence or things like that. Otherwise, if the person does not take medicine, does not take allopathic medicine, is a fit subject for homeopathy. If they say either they give up, the medicine, or they themselves, they have given up, but do not make the mistake to say, oh, I cannot take you because you are taking drugs, because sometimes they will consider that as stop the drugs and I shall take you, which is a different thing. We had that experience once with a schizophrenic girl where one of the doctors said that we cannot take you because you are taking so many drugs. She was the daughter of a police officer. So one day I see the police officer, the daughter and the mother in a terrible state, the daughter, in a schizophrenic state. He says, we came. I say, why? What is it? He said, you said to stop the medicine and we should come. I said, who was the doctor? We find the doctor. He said, come here, did you say to stop in front of them? She said, no. I said, we cannot take your case because you are taking medicines. So she came on she was 15 years schizophrenic, that girl. So they say, but we stopped the medicine because we thought they pressed us. Then they pushed to the corner where we had to take the case. I took the case myself, and I found the remedy Deris Pinata indicated in this case. And Deris. And because there was no higher potency than 30, we prescribed a dose of 30. There was a terrific aggravation for 2 days where she had epileptic fits added to the schizophrenic state. The people described afterwards that it was terrible, but they had seen the girl into a terrible situation, and they managed to keep her. Within 3 days, she recovered. She was well for about 6 months, absolutely well, and she made a love affair. She, for the first time in her life, found a boyfriend, and they had a love affair. She had sex with him. And of course the boy, she found the boy somewhere, they had sex and a few times, and then the boy left her. As soon as the boy left her, there was a relapse. When there was a relapse, the people were so enthusiastic, they have clinged on a... When there was the relapse, we tried Deris, didn't work. We tried 10 other remedies within 3, 4, 5 days, but she was tearing everything to pieces, etc. She had to be hospitalized. With the difference now that where she used to take a quantity of medicine to calm down now she would take only 1/10 of what she used to take. But still we lost the case. That's a case where people would say, we went to homeopathy, it didn't do anything. If there is no medicine and she understands the situation, yes, I'm sure she can be helped.
Is there no danger of return of the cancer in the lung or that you had before?
If there is a possibility, in general, if there is a possibility to reverse the process, there is a possibility for cure. So take that chance, because she has no other possibility.
What about if the patient was on drugs?
Biban?
If the patient was the schizophrenic you just mentioned,
yes.
she's still taking the drugs.
If she's still taking the drugs, we cannot affect anything. You see, by taking the drugs counteract our medicines and we can have no effect. Neither we can stop these drugs.
Does that include the long-term withdrawal effects of drugs as well?
No, you are talking about drug addicts. Tranquilizers. Tranquilizers are not major psychotropic drugs, and this we can stop. You know, the Valium type, the Tavor Valium.
Very long time, 9 months to 2 years.
Yes, yes, this you can't stop without any problem. But when we go to major psychotropic drugs like Mellaril, Alloperidine, Largactil, and this type of drugs, then it's another story.
Does acupuncture negate
I
homeopathy?
would not say negate, no, but I would say that either the one or the other at a time. Do not do both together.
I've got a few questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Very brief. So,
Yes.
First of all, what about provings? You say, have you actually done some provings? Roughly how many provings have you carried out?
I have not done proving. I took medicines myself, doing it myself, but we had only one proving in the school in Athens, with medical doctors getting involved, the doctors that worked in the center, and that was a complete failure. Why? Because nobody really gave the attention that they should have been given into such an experiment. It was really a failure. It was absolutely disheartening. I mean, and I don't like to, I mean, I never said anything about the experiment. I never wrote a paper or anything like that, because it was terrible.
The use of homeopathy for first aid amongst the general public, is it something that you would encourage or that you would discourage?
Considering the lack of homeopaths which exist today, I would say if they are careful and they just take one dose of 30, no harm can be done. But if the people are used to taking a lot of drugs all the time, a lot of homeopathic drugs, are discouraged, definitely.
Would you say that there's no indication at all for any form of orthodox immunization or prophylactics like antimalarials?
Oh, well, I do not say that. I have expounded my ideas in my book, which show that perhaps, it's not proven, perhaps immunization is responsible for affecting the immune system and therefore allowing on a long term the development of chronic diseases. I do believe that different immunization, I mean multiple sclerosis is the result of certain immunizations. Rheumatoid arthritis is the result of another immunization type, you know. This I believe, but this is only a belief, and therefore we cannot advise on that belief. If I was to be immunized, I would not accept. But this is my responsibility. If people, they come and ask us whether they should immunize their children or not, we advise them that they should, as long as the immunization is compulsory. You know, if that particular immunization is compulsory in Greece, they have to do it. If it's not compulsory, then they have to take the responsibility themselves. They will say then, what about if my child gets sick, can I bring it to you? We say yes. So there are many people who decide not to.
You were talking in the lecture, the public lecture, about the degeneration of health.
Yeah.
And one of the factors, you gave various factors, there was a deterioration in diet, the state of the world situation, the bomb, family breakup, and sort of the suppression of biology. Have you any, in your own ideas, sort of any ideas of the
percentages?
Yeah.
It's a difficult question. It's something I sell. I can only conjecture. And I believe immunizations and antibiotics and cortisone and all these major tranquilizers, the psychotropic drugs, all these medicines are responsible mainly for degeneration of the human race, of the, yeah.
One last question.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
but do you feel that vasectomy is another form of sterilisation have an adverse effect on the human
Disectomy. A vasectomy. Yeah. I have no opinion about that. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.